Joining us right now is legal analyst Greg Henning. Good to see you.
So, Greg, let's start at the very beginning. This means what for the former president right now? He physically has to appear in New York City in some period of time, correct?
Yeah, he'll have to appear in New York City, likely with an attorney, and the government may ask that he gets booked, just like any other defendant who would be facing criminal charges. So there is a very good chance that he has to appear either at a police station or at that courthouse where he'll be arraigned so that he can be fingerprinted and photographed and brought into the criminal justice system.
The familiar mugshot that we're all familiar with, right? The former president will go through that, right?
It's possible that he gets a regular booking photo. It's also possible that they work out some type of arrangement where he doesn't have to look that way. But if he was going to be treated like any other defendant, he would be booked and have a photograph taken.
And Greg, how soon will this happen? Could this happen this evening? Could it happen in a few days?
I think it's unlikely that it happens this evening, given the level of security and logistics that would need to be worked out in order to have the former president of the United States brought into Manhattan and charged with a crime and then arraigned. It'll probably take some time. So I would guess in the coming weeks, and that will be negotiated between the Trump defense team and the DA's office, most likely.
And we like to talk about this as someone has been indicted and therefore has to respond to the indictment. But this is a former president. This has never happened. This is a former president.
It's never happened before. There are some things that are important to be pointed out. He isn't being prosecuted at this point for a crime that took place while he was in the White House. This predates his time as the president. So in many respects, he's being treated like a regular citizen. He's being charged with a crime that took place before he became the president. But yes, it is the first time in the history of the United States that a former president, or any president really, is charged with a crime, and he's going to be facing prosecution just like anybody else would be.
And Greg, we don't know specific charges at this moment, correct?
We don't know the specific charges. It's rumored that it involves a misdemeanor of improper keeping of business records, sort of reminiscent of the treatment of Al Capone. He was a mobster, but he ended up getting caught for things like tax evasion. Here, the improper records have to do with hush funds paid to a former playmate or porn star, essentially. And there's an allegation that that was done in order to keep his campaign for president afloat.
And Greg, I mean to cut you off, to expand on that just a little bit, as we understand it, in New York, this is a misdemeanor. Essentially, what he is responding to is a misdemeanor, but will they expand it to a felony? I mean, how do you mushroom that into a felony?
It's a misdemeanor if it's just going to be the business records charge, but there is a theory that the Manhattan DA's office has floated that they would prosecute this as a felony by connecting it to an election fraud scheme. So the improper business records, how those payments to the former porn star were logged, if they were used improperly in order to hide or protect his political campaign, they could at least attempt to elevate it to a felony by claiming it was done in violation of election law.
So what's potentially happening now? Is Bragg's office trying to negotiate a surrender right now with Donald Trump? What do you see is happening right at this moment?
I think at this point, somebody from the district attorney's office has already spoken to a person from the Trump team, explained what's going to happen, and talked about options. I think there's probably some very high-level people at the United States Secret Service who are putting their head in their hands right now, trying to figure out how they're going to protect the former president by bringing him into the city during what is very likely to be a total circus atmosphere. You cannot even imagine what the streets around the courthouse will look like if Trump is brought in and arraigned. So it will be a circus. And right now, it seems like they're just negotiating how big the tent is going to have to be.
Also, Greg, we're going to take if we have live pictures of Trump Tower, let's take that. And because right now you can see it's a very tight shot, so you can't see what's around there. But the former president has said, and we also would this be the president? Would this be Mr. Trump's plane? Is that what this is? We see
that's the Trump plane in West Palm.
That's in West Palm Beach, Florida. There is the Trump plane. So, Greg, the former president has said, this is going to happen. He said it, he said it was going to happen like a week and a half ago. It's going to happen. And when it does happen, rise up, America, and express your voice. You know what I mean?
He's made some very public and aggressive comments, and he also wants to assert control. His theory about this has been that it is a political prosecution, that he is being prosecuted by Democrats in order to disrupt his chances at becoming president again. So he is just on brand and on message. He will likely come into New York and show up with his chest puffed out and his head held high, arguing that he is simply a martyr. And Lord knows what would happen if he is prosecuted, held in front of a jury, and then acquitted. So this begins a very long process of him being prosecuted, and it is very likely to be a circus every step of the way.
Greg Henning, thank you for the breakdown. Thank you very much.
Greg, thank you so much. So former President Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, did release a statement this evening. He says, in part, and I'm quoting, "For the first time in our country's history, a president, current or former, of the United States has been indicted. I take no pride in issuing this. However, I do take solace in validating the adage that no one is above the law, not even a former president." Today's indictment is not the end of this chapter, but rather just the beginning. Now that the charges have been filed, it is better for the case to let the indictment speak for itself.
It is 6:16 at night. If you just come home and just put on the television, we're following the breaking news. And again, to recap, a grand jury has voted to indict former President Donald Trump. The first time that a current or former American president faces criminal charges. Right now, that indictment remains sealed, so we don't know exactly what he is indicted for. There's no word on when the former president will leave the state of Florida, which is where he is, last check, to go for New York. But we do know that Trump's lawyer is aware of the indictment.